guys, it's Maisie from Show Low Public Library, and we are back today in the Show Low TV studio bringing you another adult DIY. So if you're watching us while we're recording this, we're on Facebook Live, so you can go ahead and say hi to us down in the comments. And if you have questions along the way while I'm doing it, you can put them on the screen and I'll be able to see them. You might also be watching this later after it's recorded on the Show Low TV YouTube channel, on our Facebook page, which is Show Low Public Library, or you might be watching it at home on your Sparklight cable, which is channel 56 or 1056 in HD. So we are going to be making these beautiful pine cone flowers today for Valentine's Day. So you can make them for yourself, or you can make them and give them to somebody. This is the one that I made, and I'm going to show you guys kind of how I did it. You've had a chance over the last few weeks to potentially come to the library and pick up a kit. So I'm going to talk about what was in the kit and then some of the things that weren't if you want to do it at home. So the first thing you're going to want to do when you start this project is you're going to want to cover your surface with something, because you're going to be painting and you're going to be using hot glue or potentially super glue, which I'll explain later. There was sort of a mishap with the hot glue, but super glue is here to save us, you guys. So you're going to need to do that. You're going to need a couple of different things. So you're going to need some paintbrushes. These are just regular paintbrushes we bought. I think we bought these at Kittle's. So some kind of paintbrush. I have different sizes. The one that I used the most was this one, which is sort of a rounded edge kind of one. But you may, depending on the size of your pine cones, want to have one that's like real skinny, which is like this one. It's a little bit skinnier. So you want to have different paintbrushes. You want to have your paint, obviously. So I've got 3 different colors. You guys had different colors in your kit, so it doesn't matter what color you got or what color you paint them. You just obviously, like when you get a flower bouquet, they're different colors. So I've got one that is called Pink Parfait, and this is just regular acrylic. Pumpkin orange, and this one is just called red. So there's my paint brushes. You're also going to need some floral tape, which is a little roll of, it's called floral tape, but I discovered that it doesn't actually stick to anything. It's a little roll of like a green kind of ribbon-like stuff. If you picked up a kit from the library, this was in there, but if not, you'll have to buy some of this. I bought mine on Amazon. And you'll use this to wrap around your dowels, which I'll show you how to do that, because I had never used it, and so I was having a hard time. Hi guys, thanks for watching. So you're gonna need some dowels. I've got 2 dowels that are just plain, so I could show you what they look like. And these ones I actually bought at Walmart in the baking section. I originally looked in the kitchen section for like bamboo skewers, but those are real skinny, and I was worried they wouldn't hold the pine cone up because it's kind of heavy. So these are ones that you would actually use for cakes or like cake pops and stuff like that. That's where I got those. And then this is what they look like when they're covered with the floral tape. So you'll need those. You're also going to need your pine cones, of course, which the ones we ordered online, so they were cleaned and ready to use. But if you are comfortable just going out into your backyard or going outside and finding some, you can do that. You just want to make sure that there's no dirt or bugs or anything on them or in them when you go to use them. These ones we got online, so they've been like sanitized, so they're ready to use. So they were different sizes. Some of them were real big and some of them were kind of small. And then when they're painted, they look like this. And so I'll kind of show you guys how I painted them. The painting is probably, I guess, the hardest part of this. If you want to call it difficult, it wasn't really that difficult, but that's the most lengthy process. And then you're going to potentially need some scissors or this is actually a thing that used to cut wire, but I used it because some of the pine cones have, like this one has one, it has like a little thingy, and you want to try to get that off so that it's flat on the bottom. So you might need scissors to do that, which is why I have these. Or some of them were crazy and I used these little wire cutter things on there. So you'll need something to potentially cut the little bottom nub off your pine cone. So, and then I've also got a cup here that has water in it for my paintbrushes. And then this, of course, is my trusty super glue. that I'll explain to you. You may or may not need to use this. I bought it as a backup to my hot glue because some of my flowers were having trouble. So there's my super glue. So the first thing you're gonna do obviously is you have your pine cones that are cleaned and ready to go. I'm gonna try to get this thing off with my wire cutters to make it flat on the bottom before I paint it. So I'm just gonna kind of pinch it off there on the bottom. You wanna be careful so you don't like tear at it and break your pine cone. So you gotta be kind of careful. So I'm just gonna sort of get it off there as flat as I can make it. It's never gonna totally not be there because that's like the little center thing that's kind of holding your pine cone together. So it's never not totally gonna be there. So you just have to be careful when you pull it off. I think if I give it a good whack, it'll come off. There we go. So now they're both ready to be painted. This one has like a tiny little nub on it that I can cut off. Maybe if I can make my hands work. Or I don't make it fly off the table. There we go. Okay. So those are ready to go. So they're just my regular pine cones. The bottom's as flat as I'm going to be able to get it on there. So then when you paint them, I'm going to put gloves on just so I don't get paint all over my hands. But you don't have to do this obviously if you're at home. So then let's see. I've got couple red ones, a couple pink ones. So let's try a pink one maybe. So I'm just going to kind of show you guys how you paint it. You'll have to paint it in stages because it's round. You'll kind of paint down one side and then you'll have to let it dry and then wait for that to dry and then flip it over. It has to dry completely because you're going to hold it. And then you'll paint the other side. So it took a couple hours for me to paint mine. Like I said, that's the longest part of this process is the painting. So I'm just going to put a little paint down. Then I'm going to take my brush. So I'm going to hold it I'm going to paint the bottom first. So I'm going to start at the bottom. So I'm going to hold it from the top and I'm just going to start painting it on there. And so you can use any kind of acrylic paint. Doesn't matter what color, doesn't matter what brand, whatever you have at home is fine. So you're going to start painting it and you want to kind of paint it, I guess, kind of chunky, kind of thick. That way it sticks into those little crevices on the pine cone. It's not going to completely cover it. If you look closely at mine, which I'll show you guys once we do this part, there are still some like wood areas you can see. So it looks kind of natural, which is good. You could also potentially try this with, if you found pine cones that were already painted, I've never seen those, but maybe they have them. You could make this with that and that would cut out a lot of the time. So I'm going to paint the whole, like the flat bottom of the pine cone. Then I'm going to go down one side. I think I'm going to go down the short, what I'm going to call the short side. So like this side kind of curves down to the top and then this is what I'm calling the short side is this side. So what you'll do to paint it is you'll paint the edges of the little spikes. And then what you'll do is you'll kind of, if you tilt it towards yourself, you'll be able to see in there into the little crevices and you want to kind of get in there so that no matter what angle you're looking at it from, it looks pink or it looks red or whatever. It's all painted. So I'm kind of just, I'm using the big flat brush and I'm just kind of sticking it in between the little, whatever these are called, cones. What are these little things called on the pine cone? Like petals, pine cone petals? I don't know what they're called. And sticking it in there and making sure they're all covered. So you'll do that as far down as you can on the one side. Then you're gonna just let it chill out and dry. I will say, now that I've done a couple of these, I wouldn't paint on the one side you're painting first. I would not paint all the way down to the top of the pine cone because at one point when I was painting some of mine, I had to flip it over and I had to hold it from this side. So if this part's already painted, you may get it on yourself or you may flake off. So you don't want to paint like the top of your pine cone. You just want to paint kind of down one side in there like that. So I'm going to stop here. So then you'd let this dry, which only takes a little bit while because it's pretty fast drying when you're using acrylic. So you'd lay it down to the side to dry like this so that it hopefully will stay upright there like that. Okay, so I'm gonna leave it. So then let's just say, for example, that was dry and I was gonna keep painting it. Okay, I'm gonna show you guys on this one. So if I had had my side, my bottom would be painted, the side would be painted, okay? And it would be dry. So what I would do is I'd hold it upright from either the bottom, when it's dry, you can touch it, or if you feel more comfortable holding it from the top, you wanna get a grip on it, and to paint the opposite side of your little pine cone petals or whatever we're deciding they're called, what you'll do is you'll take your brush, this is the flat brush again, and you're gonna kind of do the same thing where you sort of reach the brush down in there and sort of sweep it across the top to paint down inside there so that when you're looking at it from the top, it looks painted. And if you're looking at it from the bottom, it looks painted. So the whole thing will be completely painted, completely covered. So that's why you kind of have to go in stages. I'd say some of the pine cones that were smaller, I was able to do it in like 2 phases. And then some of them, like that big one I just did, that one would probably take me three phases between painting and drying and then being able to hold it and then letting it dry again in between. And then of course, before you start gluing them together, you want them to be completely dry, 100% dry, no wet paint. So then when you do the top, because you haven't touched the top at this point in theory, you kind of have to do both. So you sort of stick your brush down in there on the top and get all those little crevices from the little thing that sticks out the top. And then you have to kind of go underneath too to cover the whole top like this. So in theory, when you're done, the whole thing, as much as you can reach with your brush, will be painted. So I'm gonna leave this one to the side to dry too, and we'll use it later. So, and you'll wash your brush off. So I'm gonna lay this one next to that one carefully so I don't get paint on anything. So then your pine cones would be painted like these. So these are all painted. So from the top, I can't really, I can see kind of wooden parts, but it's all painted. Or if I hold them from the bottom, same thing. I can see all the way around. They're totally painted and they're dry. So these are ready to become your flowers. In the original example, which I found online, I'll link it down in the comments when we're done. She had pine cones that were probably all about this size. So not in a sorted box, but they were all this size. And what she did, which now after doing this project, I could see how this would be helpful. So if you want to do this at home, I think it would be helpful. She drilled a hole in the bottom of her pine cone straight through the bottom with a little drill bit. Then she put her glue in there and then she put her dowel. The reason I think that probably wouldn't work on these bigger ones is because, especially depending on what size dowel you have, like this dowel is, not quite like pinky, width, but it's close. It's not skinny at all. So, think about your drill bit would have to be this big to drill the hole in there. And I just don't know what would happen to your pine cone. Would it explode? Would it work? I don't know. You'd have to try it. But in the original example, she did that. I chose not to do that. So you'll have your pine cones. If you want to do the drilling, you do that beforehand once they're painted and ready to go. Then what you're going to do is you're going to cover your dowels. So this is what the covered one looks like. This is what the not covered one looks like. And you're going to use the floral tape to cover them. And like I said, I discovered, since never using floral tape, that it's called floral tape, but it's not sticky like tape is. It's kind of got like a ribbon feel to it that's sort of waxy or sticky. That's what makes it stick, I discovered. So what you'll do is you'll take your dowel and you're gonna kind of want to pull a little bit on the edge of your floral tape. Don't like rip it, because I did that too. But the trick is to kind of stretch it, and then the heat from you working it is what makes it stick. So you're gonna take your dowel and you're gonna start it at the top, and you're going to go around 2 or 3 times on the top just to hold it on there. And you're going to kind of pull it. Like I said, don't pull it so hard that you tear it, but you want to stretch it. And that's what's activating the stickiness, the wax that's going to make it stick. And then what you're going to do is you're going to go around your dowel at an angle that's sort of downward. And you're sort of pulling. I'm kind of tugging on it as I'm going, and I'm applying pressure with my 2 fingers, pushing it as I'm turning, so that the heat from my fingers is making the wax make it stick. So I'm going down slowly at sort of an angle, and I did 2 passes on mine because I felt like it was on there better once I did that. When I just did 1, it seemed like it was coming off. And it sticks to itself. So if you do 2 passes, in theory, it should stick. If you didn't want to do this part, because I don't know if you could find floral tape like in a store if you had it, you could also just paint them green. That would be fine too. So I'm going to go all the way down here, continuing to kind of tug at it a little bit, applying the pressure with my fingers, and I'm going to go all the way down. And then I'm going to turn it and I'm going to go back the other way. So I'm almost to the end. So I'm going to go to the end, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip it over like that. And then I'm going to make sure I've got a grip on it, and I'm just going to go back the other direction, doing the same thing where the heat of my hand is sort of melding it together, and it's sticking to itself now, so it should be stuck on there. And so I'm going to go all the way back down. And this time I'm going sort of at the opposite angle. I'm kind of going down at an angle instead of going the other way. And you want to make sure it's nice and snug on there. And then when I get to the bottom, I'm just going to cut it off, and then I'm going to kind of maneuver it so that it sticks. And you'll do that to all your dowels. So your first step is to get your pine cones and paint them. And since you have to wait for it to dry, you can do this part while it's drying. And then you'll cover your dowels. Okay, so I'm at the end. So I'm going to go a little ways out, and I'm just going to tear it off there. It's stuck to me. And then I'm just going to wrap it around as tightly as I can, the end. And then I'm just going to kind of run my fingers around it to really get it on there so it doesn't come off. And this takes practice. I had to do like 3 of them, and then I laid them to the side, and I came back a few minutes later and all the tape had come off. And I'm like, it's tape, it's not sticking. Well, then I had to ask someone else, and I was like, how do you use this? And that's when they were like, oh yeah, it's not actually like tape, like sticky. It sticks to itself. So I'm going to go around. So there's my dowel that I just did. So you would do that to all your dowels so that they're ready to go. I just need 2 for my 2 pine cones that are remaining. So I've got the pine cones and I've got the dowels. I got to be careful not to dip them in the paint that's over here. So we don't need my floral tape. So then I originally used hot glue on mine, and that's what I told you in the instructions if you picked up a kit. And the woman that did this originally on Pinterest, she did use hot glue, but she did the drilling first. So with just the hot glue, you have to make sure that you kind of want to put it in a position where it's sort of flat on the bottom of your pine cone so that it will stick. That was the one thing I think I wasn't paying attention to in the beginning. So what you'll do is you'll take your hot glue, and like on this one, let's see, this is my dowel, and I put it on there like there. Over here is pretty flat. So when it goes up, if it's over here, that won't look too bad. It's a little crooked, but it'll make it flatter. So they won't all be perfect because some of the pine cones grow really like they grow really crazy on the bottom. So I'm gonna put it over on this side to make it as flat as I can. So you're gonna kind of figure out where it needs to go and not get your hot glue stuck to yourself. Then I'm gonna put some hot glue down and I'm gonna do the whole squeeze to get as much as I can. Then I'm gonna take my dowel and I'm gonna stick it down. And you wanna just hold it there probably longer than you normally would. Normally when we do most of these projects with hot glue, it's kind of on a flat surface. So I just tell you guys to do the dab of hot glue and stick it on there and leave it and it'll dry. This, because, first of all, because of the angle, because you are the one that's controlling it being stuck, you have to hold it there until it dries. Which you can kind of blow on it till it dries. And then, if you are unsuccessful at doing this, you could try the drill technique and see if that helps. I think the reason I could see that helping is because then you sort of, because you have the hole that would be there with the hot glue, it's kind of like gravity is sort of helping hold it in there too, instead of it just sitting on the top of the pine cone. So I could see how that would help, but if you hot glue them and they don't stick, they don't take, they don't stay on there, whatever happens to them, you can use super glue, and I was successful with that. I tried one this morning that I had hot glued, and then I came in the next day, and as it had cured overnight, it had like fallen off like a little dead soldier. It was laying on the table. And so what I did is I stuck a little bit of hot glue just over in like the space where the dowel would have been, and then, or I stuck super glue in there, and then I held it there, which I had to hold it there for a while. That stuck, that seemed to take. And then you let it cure overnight, 24 hours, whatever the instructions on your super glue say. And in theory, super glue should hopefully hold it. I guess I'll let you guys know if I come in a week from now and all my flowers are laying on the table, then that means super glue didn't work either. But we'll have to wait and see. And it should hold it, because in theory, you're gonna put them in a little container and you're just gonna look at them. It's not like a wand you're gonna be waving around, so hopefully they won't fall off. But if you are decide you wanna wave it around, be careful, because you might have flying pine cones if it doesn't wanna stick. So I'm gonna try it here in a second and see if it'll hold it, if I let go of it. And then you'll do this to all of your pine cones so they're ready. And you'll pull off your little hot glue strings, of course, which will still happen, which I'll do here in a second. I'm trying to wait till the last possible second. That way, hopefully it won't fall off and you guys won't have to stand there on your computer and watch me hold it down for another 3 minutes with the super glue, because I'm sure that's just riveting. So maybe, yes, I think it's gonna stay. So I have a little hot glue string. I'm just gonna pull that off of me. I think it's gonna hold it, you guys. That's good. That's really good. If you didn't have a hot glue gun, or you didn't want to go through the whole what if the hot glue works, what if it doesn't work thing, and you just wanted to go straight to super glue, I'm sure that would be fine. That would work. So I think it's gonna hold it. So yes, there we go. He didn't fall off. Yay. Okay. So that's what it looks like when you're done. So like I said, he's a little crookedy, but he's flat. It's touching the flat part of the pine cone, which is what's important. So I'm gonna let him sort of chill out there for a minute, and I'll show you guys like this one. This one is really crooked. Look how crooked he is, you guys. He is like way leaning, but I did it that way because when I was holding it, it's the flattest part that was near the top, near the bottom of the pine cone. I guess there is sort of a flat part over here, but if I had put it over here and then it was coming down, I feel like that would have looked worse. But you just have to determine for yourself when you're making this, where are you gonna put it? So like for this one, for example, this one's pretty straight up and down. So he's a little bit easier. You won't have to worry about him kind of leaning different ways. So like if I was going to do this one, I'd turn it over, and like over here on this side is kind of flatter than the rest of it. So I might go, but see there's really big points. So maybe if I did this one, actually, I'd probably go like right here. So then when it's on your bouquet, if you're right there, He's going to be a little crooked, but for the most part, he's going to be flat. So you just have to kind of look at all your pine cones once you get them ready and sort of determine the best placement of where your little skewer is going to go. So then you'd let them cure overnight, super glue, hot glue, whichever method you choose to do. And then you will put them in your vase, which I couldn't find a real vase, so I found this, but this is what I was able to find at the library. You want to make sure when you're picking your vase, I learned this too, that if you have one of those vases that's kind of fat at the bottom and then it sort of bottlenecks, the problem with that is you'd think, oh, that's going to look really good. But because these are so big, and normally when you have flowers, you know, you don't want to squish them, but they're moldable. They're not hard like these. So you can kind of like fold them up and plunk them in there. These have to have space at the top. So you want to find a container that's tall enough so that the sticks aren't leaning real far, but you also want to find one that's wide enough at the top so that once you get all the sticks in, they're not squishing each other, because these are hard. They won't squish together in your vase or whatever you find. So you just kind of determine different types of containers that you want to put yours in. But once you find your container, you put them in there and they're ready to go. So these are your beautiful pine cone flowers that you made. And so if you picked up a kit at the library, thank you for picking that up. If you didn't, you might be able to find some of this stuff at home or go out and get this stuff to make these. And remember, if you guys have ideas for things that you want us to do for DIY, you can put them in the comments, you can email them to me, you can send them to us on Facebook or Instagram, and then we'd love to see some of your ideas. Or if you make this project, you can always send us a picture. We'd love to see what your creation turned out to look like. And I will try to find the original and post it down in the comments on this video when I go back to the library so that you guys can read more about the drilling technique that she talks about. So I want to thank you for watching with us today, and I hope you have a lovely Valentine's Day. Even if you're by yourself or you're with somebody else, hopefully you can enjoy it with your beautiful pinecone flowers. And we will see you guys next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.